At the airport, she turned to me with that familiar mix of urgency and irritation, her voice tight as a wire. "Don't walk with me. You'll embarrass me in front of my friends." I froze for a second, feeling that familiar twinge of hurt, but I just nodded and stepped back, letting her stride ahead with her usual confidence. Weeks later, when she returned, I couldn't help noticing that the person waiting to give her a ride home wasn't me. That little detail lingered uncomfortably, even though I tried to push it aside. Vanessa and I have always lived in parallel worlds, sometimes touching, sometimes drifting apart. Mine is a straightforward, grounded life, the kind where success is measured in tangible things: steady work, a roof over your head, bills paid on time. Hers is entirely digital, curated, and designed to impress strangers. For the first year and a half, I found it fascinating, even charming. Her filtered world made mine feel stable and real, and I admired the energy she brought to it. But everything changed 6 months ago, when she walked away from a stable marketing job to pursue life as a full-time influencer. We hashed out a deal. I'd handle the big household bills for 6 months, giving her the runway to grow her brand without worrying about rent or utilities. In return, she would dip into her savings to cover her business expenses. I told myself it was a short-term, calculated risk, an investment in her future, not a permanent obligation. Almost immediately, though, the line between business expenses and personal shopping blurred. My patience started to fray as I realized that what I thought was a partnership was starting to feel like sponsorship. I was silently funding her self-made show, and she was becoming the star in a way that left me on the sidelines. The cracks began small but unmistakable. Offhand comments about how my life wasn't aspirational enough. The way she talked to me like I was her assistant instead of her partner. I brushed it off at first, telling myself it was temporary. This 3-week content creation trip to Europe was supposed to be her final push before the 6-month trial ended, and she had to start contributing again. I convinced myself to hang on until then. But the airport incident, the way she looked at me, was the final straw. I drove her to the terminal, loaded her 3 massive, ridiculous suitcases into the car, and followed her toward check-in. That's when I saw her friends, Claire and Megan, striding toward us like models on a runway, perfectly put together for a 10-hour flight. Their eyes flicked toward me, taking in my hoodie and jeans, and I caught a flash of that faint, judgmental smirk. Vanessa stopped dead in her tracks, turning to me with panic written all over her face. Not a loving glance, not even a hint of gratitude, just sheer, raw anxiety. "Okay, you can stop here," she said sharply, like she was delivering a verdict rather than saying goodbye. I blinked. "What do you mean? I'll walk you to security." She exhaled as if I had just suggested we start churning our own butter in the middle of the terminal. Her eyes darted to Claire and Megan, who pretended not to watch but clearly were, and then back to me. "Don't walk with me," she repeated, her voice low and cutting. "You'll embarrass me in front of my friends." And in that instant, it all became crystal clear. To her, I wasn't someone to love, cherish, or even miss. I was a liability, a flaw in her polished, controlled image. I looked past her and saw Claire and Megan smirking knowingly. They had heard every word, and in that moment, it felt like a lens focusing all the small, painful moments of our relationship into one sharp, undeniable truth. Every dismissive comment she'd made, every time I felt like an accessory instead of a partner, flashed through my mind. Everything clicked into place. The love I had felt for her didn't just fade. It evaporated like mist under the sun. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. Instead, a strange, almost euphoric calm settled over me. I looked at her perfect, painted face, took a deep breath, and simply nodded. "You're right. I wouldn't want to do that," I said, my voice even, polite, almost kind in a way that made her uneasy. I let go of her luggage cart, and it rattled softly on the floor, a small, almost comical sound in the otherwise bustling terminal. "Have a great trip," I said, keeping my voice calm, measured, like I was stating a fact rather than an emotion. Then I turned and walked away, slow, deliberate steps, never once glancing back. She froze in place, her body stiff, her expression caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. She had been expecting a fight, an argument, some dramatic scene she could later recount to her friends like a tale of triumph or humiliation. That was always her style, the performance over the reality. But this time, she got nothing. All she saw was my back, retreating, growing smaller with every step, walking away from her and from the life we had shared. Outside, the late morning sun was pale against the concrete of the airport. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my fingers brushing against the cool glass, feeling a strange sense of liberation. 3 weeks. That was how long she would be gone. 3 weeks of silence, distance, and perspective. That was more than enough time to reclaim my world and recalibrate my life. She was about to experience the rebranding of a lifetime. And one thing was already certain. The ride home from this trip would no longer be mine. The drive home was surreal, a strange mix of calm focus and simmering satisfaction. Part of me, the petty, emotional side that still carried bruises from months of dismissal, wanted to rush home and throw all her clothes, her cosmetics, her ridiculous equipment onto the lawn, let the neighbors witness the chaos. But the other part of me, the part that thrived on structure, precision, and strategy, knew better. This wasn't chaos. This was careful dismantling. Every move, every step, had to be deliberate. First stop, the dealership where I had bought the luxury SUV she loved to flaunt. It gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol of both status and control, and it had always been mine on paper. I walked in, greeted the sales manager with a nod, and explained that I wanted to sell it back. He looked surprised for half a second, then smirked knowingly. He understood a good deal when he saw one. By late afternoon, the paperwork was complete. The car was theirs again, and a very large check, heavy and tangible, rested in my pocket. Step 1, complete. The renovation. Returning home, the house felt like a museum of someone else's life. Every corner bore her stamp. Presents stacked neatly like trophies, clothes spilling from closets, beauty products scattered across counters. Even the spare bedroom had become her filming studio, a shrine to her digital self, loud, chaotic, and impossibly intrusive. It was time to reclaim my space. But I didn't just want to move her things. I wanted to erase her presence entirely, to create a blank canvas where my life could unfold again. I called a high-end junk removal and deep cleaning service, laying out my vision with precise detail. Every object that wasn't mine gone, closets emptied, bathroom cleared, spare bedroom gutted, and the entire house deep cleaned from top to bottom. I wanted the walls, floors, and counters to feel new again, to breathe freedom instead of clutter. I even offered to pay double if they could complete it by the next day. While the professionals worked, I turned my attention to the digital remnants of our shared lives. Streaming accounts? Passwords changed. Bank accounts and credit cards? She was removed as an authorized user everywhere. Her influencer website? I didn't delete it. That would have been too simple, almost petty. Instead, I took control from behind the scenes. Contact email and recovery phone switched to mine. I became the silent administrator of her digital persona, holding the reins of a brand she had built while I had been patient and supportive. By the next evening, the transformation was complete. The house was quiet, empty, sterile in the best way possible. The junk removal team had worked with ruthless efficiency. Every trace of her life, every little mark of her presence, had vanished. The spare bedroom, once cluttered with ring lights, cameras, and fast fashion piles, was now a clean, empty room full of untapped potential. Yet even as the physical space was cleared, I realized something important. An empty house isn't automatically a home. There's a difference between removing chaos and restoring comfort. This was just the first step, the structural reset, the foundation for something new. So, I went shopping. Not mindless shopping, thoughtful, purposeful shopping. I bought a new couch, the kind you could actually sink into and fall asleep without waking up the next morning. I dug out the solid oak coffee table I had built myself a few years back and had been keeping in storage because it didn't fit her minimalist, Instagram-ready aesthetic. I got a bigger TV, the kind that actually made movies feel like an experience, and paired it with a proper sound system that shook the walls when it needed to. I turned the spare bedroom into my sanctuary, part home gym, part workshop for my smaller design projects. My life has always been about making tangible, solid things with weight and purpose. And finally, I was reclaiming my space to do just that, without compromise. Over the next 2 weeks, I systematically rebuilt my life from the ground up. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in months because, apparently, they weren't exciting enough for her feed. I went hiking, feeling the dirt under my boots and the wind on my face again. I went to baseball games, cheered loudly, and didn't think about taking a single picture. I did all the things I had abandoned because they weren't Instagrammable, because they didn't fit her carefully curated life. She did reach out. Well, sort of. Short, breezy texts landed on my phone during this time, always with some carefully framed picture of her in front of the Eiffel Tower or twirling pasta in Rome. She never asked how I was. It was all updates on her glamorous existence. I didn't reply once. I had no intention of entering her world again. The final piece of my plan fell into place a few days before she was due to return. I took part of the check from the car sale and used it to book a trip for myself, a 2-week motorcycle tour through the national parks out west. A trip I had dreamed about for years but had put off because Vanessa hated camping, hated dirt, hated life that wasn't filtered through a lens. My flight was scheduled to leave on the very day she was supposed to arrive. Perfect timing. The day before my flight, I sent her a single, surgical email. The subject line read, "Important information regarding your return." The message was short, clinical, precise. "Vanessa, as per your request at the airport, I have ceased to be a part of your life. To that end, I have made the following arrangements. Your belongings have been professionally packed and moved to a secure storage facility. Address, 979, Storage Avenue, Unit 48. Access code, 0000. First month prepaid. The car you are driving has been sold. It was my property. The locks on the house have been changed. You are no longer a resident." I added one final line, measured and calm. "I trust this provides you with the freedom you desire. I will be out of the country for the next few weeks and will not be reachable. I wish you the best in your future endeavors. Adrian." I hit send, turned off my phone, and finished packing my motorcycle gear. She wanted to be the star of her own show. I had just given her a brand new stage. Completely empty. All set for her performance. I was somewhere in the middle of Capitol Reef National Park, surrounded by the vast, profound silence of the desert, when I finally turned my phone back on. 5 days had passed. 5 quiet, liberating days. And what I found was almost beautiful in its chaos. The digital onslaught was far more spectacular than I had imagined. A perfect, messy symphony of panic and rage. Hundreds of notifications waited for me. Missed calls from Vanessa, her friends, her parents. Voicemails, which I didn't even bother to play fully, but the transcriptions alone read like strings of incoherent screaming. And emails, so many emails. Thankfully, I had my best friend Mark as my man on the ground, keeping me updated. He gave me the play-by-play, a running commentary on the meltdown I had orchestrated from thousands of miles away. Vanessa's flight had finally touched down, and apparently, she had been pacing back and forth at the arrivals curb for over an hour, scanning the crowd and expecting me to appear like nothing had changed. When I didn't, chaos ensued. Mark had been my unofficial spy through a neighbor's keen eyes, and according to him, she lost it completely. Arms flailing, voice rising to a pitch that could shatter glass, drawing glances from passers-by, who probably assumed some tragic melodrama was unfolding. Eventually, she had no choice but to hail an outrageously expensive cab just to get herself back to my house. The cab driver, a tall man with a tired expression that screamed, "I've seen this before," had to help her wrestle 3 colossal, ridiculously overstuffed suitcases into the trunk. She handed him a wad of cash with the kind of dramatic flair that could only belong to someone used to being waited on. He drove off, leaving her standing at my front door, key in hand, still blissfully unaware of the reality waiting for her. And then the moment came. The key didn't work. She froze. The realization hit her like a brick. There she was, stranded on my porch, surrounded by her mountain of luggage, completely locked out of the home she had once considered hers. She started calling me, of course, shrill tones of panic and frustration spilling into voicemail. Then her friends, Claire and Megan, who had been her cheerleaders in Europe, suddenly discovered an urgent schedule conflict. They didn't have cars large enough. Their apartments were tiny and inaccessible. Excuses piled up faster than her suitcases. In the end, her parents had to drive 2 hours just to rescue her from my doorstep. Mark described the scene with a kind of dark amusement. Her father yelling at her, her mother crying quietly, and Vanessa perched on one of her oversized suitcases, just staring at the front door of the house she no longer had access to. It was a mess, messy, chaotic, humiliating, and perfectly satisfying from where I sat, thousands of miles away, free of the drama. Then the social media storm hit. A carefully choreographed campaign. Vanessa, Claire, and Megan flooded the feeds with long, emotional stories about the dark side of relationships, framing me as the villain who had abandoned Vanessa, leaving her homeless and stranded. They tried desperately to turn our story into a cautionary tale about betrayal and cruelty. But it didn't work. I had already inoculated my friends and family against this kind of nonsense. Before leaving, I had quietly sent a short, private message to a few key people, explaining that Vanessa and I had broken up, that she had said and done things that made it clear we were on completely different paths. I asked them to hold off on judgment until they had all the facts. So when the smear campaign started, it flopped. People were skeptical. The story of what she had said to me at the airport, the infamous "don't walk with me," had already leaked in small whispers. Her narrative of being a blameless victim simply didn't hold up. The crowning moment of satisfaction, however, was what I had done with her website. While I was away, I had quietly taken full administrative control. One simple, surgical change, and everything she had curated for years came crashing down. I replaced her entire portfolio of glamorous, filtered photos with a single, high-resolution image, a picture of the junk removal receipt, the total cost circled in bright red ink. Beneath it, one line of text, cold and precise. Brand undergoing a strategic realignment. Please check back soon for updates. Mark reported that one of her few remaining followers saw the update and immediately sent her a screenshot. Her carefully constructed online persona, her meticulously curated digital identity, had been reduced to a single receipt. She melted down entirely, reportedly screaming and crying, and took the entire site offline. A week later, the legal threats arrived. A polished, intimidating letter from a high-priced law firm demanded I restore her access to the house and provide financial support. My lawyer, a man who clearly took an odd pleasure in situations like this, responded with icy precision and strategic brilliance, laying out my rights, my reasoning, and the absolute impossibility of their demands. By this point, I could almost hear the tiny cogs of her control slipping, grinding uselessly. The chaos she had tried to orchestrate online and in real life was collapsing neatly, on its own timeline, thanks to a combination of planning, patience, and, honestly, sweet, satisfying irony. The last legal package I sent her was surgical, precise, and deliberate, leaving nothing to chance. Inside the envelope was a copy of the house deed, showing it belonged solely to me. A copy of the SUV's title, also in my name alone, and a meticulously calculated invoice of her half of all living expenses over the past year, a figure far beyond anything she could claim. I closed the letter with one final, polite, but firm line. If she wanted to take this to court, I would be more than happy to file a counterclaim for the money she owed me. The response, or lack of one, was immediate. The threats stopped. The social media posts stopped. All that remained was a quiet, profound silence that was sweeter than any applause or validation. It's been about 4 months since I returned from my motorcycle trip. The silence has been more liberating than I could have imagined. My house is finally my own. Every chair, every table, every shelf is something I either built with my own hands or carefully chose because it resonates with me, not because it fits someone else's filtered aesthetic. There's art on the walls I actually love. The space smells clean, feels calm, and carries no weight of performative drama. The tale of Vanessa's return, and the spectacular collapse that followed, has become something of a legend among our circle. Her parents had to rent a moving truck just to retrieve her mountain of belongings from the storage unit. By all accounts, the whole operation was tense, uncomfortable, and humiliating. She ended up moving back in with them, a fall from a glamorous digital stage to the reality of a suburban basement. Her influencer career is effectively finished. Her brand had been built entirely on a lifestyle she couldn't sustain on her own. Without me footing the bills for trips, clothes, and fancy dinners, her content disappeared. Her social feed, once a ceaseless stream of filtered perfection, now reads like a ghost town. Old photos, recycled images, and sad, vague quotes about new beginnings. Claire and Megan, her so-called loyal friends, are gone too. The trio's financial and emotional strain proved too much. They finally walked away, tired of supporting Vanessa's illusions. Their friendship had been as transactional as her relationship with me. Occasionally, I heard stories of Vanessa, small whispers from mutual friends, her career floundering, her online presence fading, friendships dissolving. I didn't gloat. There was no joy in watching someone else fail. The satisfaction came from knowing I had chosen myself. I had built a life that couldn't be stolen, borrowed, or used. I did have one last indirect interaction with her, a moment that perfectly summarized everything. About a month ago, a mutual acquaintance, the owner of a downtown gallery, called me. "Hey Adrian," he said. "You won't believe this. Vanessa came in yesterday, trying to sell me some furniture that used to be in your house. She said she's an interior designer now." I couldn't help but laugh. "Did you buy any of it?" "Are you kidding me?" he said. "It was all cheap, mass-produced junk with no character." I told her it was worthless. She completely lost it, started ranting about how you ruined her life and her career. He paused, then added with a chuckle, "For what it's worth, man, you dodged a bullet. A big, expensive, poorly decorated bullet." And that's exactly what it was. Vanessa had seen me as an accessory, a wallet, a silent foundation she could hide behind. She never understood that I wasn't merely background scenery. I was the foundation. And when the foundation walks away, the whole carefully constructed, glittering facade collapses. I'm not angry anymore. I'm free. Completely, utterly free. I've already planned my next adventure, maybe Southeast Asia this fall. I'm building new furniture for my home, solid pieces that will last decades. I'm creating a life that doesn't need approval, likes, or photographs to exist. She wanted a life that looked perfect online. I wanted a life that felt perfect in reality. And the truth is, you can't have both when one is built on the ruins of the other. She made her choice that day at the airport. She chose the image over the person. In the end, all that remained for her was that image, a blurry, fading, hollow picture of a life she never truly lived. And me? I have everything she will never understand: peace, space, freedom, and a life built on my own terms. The house smells of fresh wood and polish. The furniture carries the weight of my effort, and every morning I wake up knowing that the life I'm living is mine, unfiltered and unshakable. The world I live in now isn't perfect. It's messy at times, but it's mine. It's authentic, solid, and alive. I sleep in a bed I chose, eat meals I prepare, and wake up to a house that feels like home, not a stage. The difference between a life curated for likes and a life lived for yourself is stark, and now I understand it fully. I think about that airport day sometimes, the moment everything changed. She chose an image over a person. I chose reality over pretense. And in the end, choosing reality meant choosing freedom. Freedom to build, to create, to live without someone else's expectations weighing me down. Freedom to finally feel at home in my own life. I close my eyes at night and hear nothing but silence. And for the first time in years, that silence isn't empty. It's everything.